Nice desk.
Oh, thank you very much. Hey, welcome to this podcast. I'm really excited because Grant's here with me.
Well, hi there.
Yeah. Grant's been showing me, as a matter of fact, how to work all this equipment. He got me into podcasting. What do you think?
I think you're kicking ass and taking names.
I'm having fun anyway. What I thought we'd talk about tonight is tomorrow we're going to have a recording session with Rob Gourlay, Grant, and I. And we're going to lay down, some songs, but more than that, just some little pieces of music that we're going to creatively put together. So I'd sort of like to talk about this, have the topic for this session being what I'd call the creative process, the creative flame. How's that?
Fancy.
Yeah, go ahead and pontificate a little bit now, would you?
Pontificate, shall I? Shall I do this in a British accent?
Yes, please.
Well, I always thought that the creative flame, that's a little too much. Anyway.
Yeah, I think so too.
Anyway, so the creative aspect, it's something that's kind of, I've been learning about and trying to expand my experience with in the last couple of years, because I've recently in the last few years moved away from like practicing all the time, playing an instrument all the time, to kind of more just writing and recording music all the time. And I guess it's just another form of practicing the creative process, which I'm getting a lot better at. But
you're good at it now.
Thanks. But so I've been really learning a bunch of new kind of tricks and things that have helped me become a lot more creative in a way that I can kind of turn on and off when I want to, which is something that I think a lot of people have a hard time doing.
Oh, for sure.
So what aspect of kind of the creative flame, the creative stuff did you want to talk about today?
Good. I know exactly it, but I want to give a little bit of background, okay?
Cool.
We used to record stuff we called, what did we call it? What were the name of our CDs?
We had one called, you had one called Too Low with Rob.
Yeah,
and then
what did we talk about after that? We used to talk about
another one was Dance of the Bottom Feeders.
Yeah, darn it. I forget the title of what we sort of called the music. John Chase called it a bass meditative music.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I forget what I called it, but there's a name for it. We talked about it. Anyway, the point was we would, Grant would be practicing like crazy, and in those days he was using his, not just loop machine, but this great big box with all these pedals, and quite frankly, he was learning sounds.
Yeah.
Michael Manman showed him how to clear that sucker out, get rid of all those ugly sounds that were in there. You know how it is. You get your pedal box, your big one, and it's got 433 sounds, and you find 2 that are good and the rest of them are junk.
There's the preset Angry Young Man that you want to avoid. And
Exactly.
then another preset right next to that is Crazy Stabber.
That's right, Crazy Stabber.
There's limited use.
Anyway, so Michael taught him how to clear that sucker off 0 and start from ground 1, creating using a bunch of different parameters. Give him a little bit of an idea of that. What would you use parameter-wise to sort of put together a sound?
Right. So a lot of the pedals that I had, or in the one that you're talking about in particular, the larger like multi-effects processor,
right?
They only have a couple of really basic things that they do, but they have a lot of adjustable parameters in those things. Yes. And one of the things is changing the pitch of the sound. So I could play my bass into the thing and it would change the pitch a little bit. It would take the sound that I put into it and alter that sound in pitch. Another effect that it had was reverb type effects. Like basically reverb and delay were the same kind of idea, just different versions of that. And then some other things that I could do with it were like EQ type effects, like effects that would change the sonic quality and texture of the sound that I put into it. And then I think, what was that? So that was reverb, delay, they're kind of the same thing. Yeah. I think another kind of thing that it would do was a distortion type of thing. So it would kind of overdo sounds. I think this was basically the general categories.
You used to use that sound, which you sort of called it it's actually sort of feeding back.
Right. Yeah. That was one of their kind of distortion type things. So they would. I don't know exactly how this works, but you would send a note into the machine, and it would listen for the overtones of that note, I guess, and send it back and kind of create a feedback loop.
Created a feedback loop.
Yeah.
So Grant got a bunch of sounds, and one of our favorite one was we called the whales.
Yeah.
And it was and it would fade and come in, and it sounded like whale song. It really did.
Yeah, depending on the octave you play it. If you brought it up a couple octaves, it would often sound like a French horn or even a whistle.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. Another one was when you discovered that sort of oboe sound.
Yeah.
And he would save all these presets. So he'd say, he'd be down here making noise for, 8, 12 hours, and he'd say, Dad, check this out. And I'd come down and he'd have these 2 or 3, gorgeous, no crazy stabber stuff. And this distortion wasn't loud noisy. He'd have this gorgeous, really, I called it timbre. What it was it reminded me of, when I first started using computer and I used GarageBand, I hated the sound of some of the instruments like the guitar or the trumpet. But I found if I mixed trumpet with like fretless bass, a real octave higher, pan flute, and then maybe a little bit of voice in there, it's like, whoa, them all combined, all the overtones mixed, and I loved the timbre. I had this sound that I don't know what I'd call it, like beautiful guitar or just the sound that was unique. And in those days, all we did was just layer them over and over. Well, Grant figured out how to do that in this effects processor. And again, it was basically what Michael Mandarin had been working on for 20 years, and we got it happening. And Grant would have these beautiful sounds. And I'd just simply get on the phone and say, John, is there any time tomorrow? Okay, not tomorrow. What about Thursday? Okay, we'll be in on Thursday. And we'd go down to John's, plug in John Chase's, a beautiful studio, and simply create really cool sounds. We'd make little grooves with some of these sounds. I'd make sometimes a groove with the bass line, and Grant would add whale sounds over the top of it. Or we would play some chords, and Grant would add oboe sound over it. Oh, what about that time when you started figuring out the pedals, and it got you what we call the Osseok sound?
Right.
Like a big pedal organ moving really cool. You would lay that down, and then we would play melodies with whistle sounds and fretless bass sounds and arco bass sounds over the top of it. And that was unbelievably creative, the creative flame we had going.
Yeah, I think what kind of made that unique and powerful was that instead of using either sounds that somebody else had created or come up with and packaged,
right.
I ended up having to make my own because of, watching Manring do it. And I think that really leads us in directions when we experiment enough. It leads us in directions that are unconventional, but because you're guided by your ear instead of by like a manual or something.
Correct.
You end up creating
or a preset.
Yeah, exactly. You end up creating something that sounds good to you, and if you've listened to a lot of music and like listen to a lot of orchestral stuff,
Hans Zimmer.
Yeah. Then you tend to kind of go, oh, this sounds like a horn of some kind, like a French horn.
Exactly.
Except it's too bright and it sounds and it doesn't have quite enough sustain. So let me see how I can manipulate this thing and make it sound more like that. And then you kind of end up creating something that's an electric bass turned into a French horn, which is not a French horn and not an electric bass.
Yes.
It's its own unique thing. Yeah. So it becomes something special and different.
Oh, totally. We combined sounds.
Yeah.
Both within his machine, and then the real beauty, of course, was having first class electric basses, different kinds, steel stringed ones, nylon stringed ones, fretless ones, acoustic-ish ones, some that were real low fundamental, some that were more singing quality, and we would use these genuine acoustic sounds, because you realize the electric bass is an acoustic instrument. We just amplify it. We would use these organic sounds combined with all of these sounds that Grant was creating, which were sort of like little known to man sounds. It was like, that sounds like a French horn. Yeah, but it's got a little bit of a flute in it, doesn't it? Yeah. and that was the creative flame. We were doing that. Oh, what did we do that? 6-8 years worth, maybe?
Oh, yeah, at least, yeah.
Yeah, we recorded probably, a good 10 to 12 CDs using that. A lot of different combinations. Grant and Rob and I would do a bunch. Grant and I did just some alone. We did a lot with Michael Manring. Every once in a while we'd bring in some percussion or drums, every once in a while a guitar. One time I've got videos and little pictures of on one session that you and I were doing. I believe just you and I were alone. I've got all of a sudden, here's one little clip, and I'm playing the double bass arco. And in the next little clip, I'm playing the double bass pizzicato. In the next little clip, I'm playing 6-string acoustic guitar. In the next clip, I'm playing 6-string electric guitar. And I hadn't even gotten to the bass yet. And Grant was over there playing all of his pedals on all these machines going, his toy box, that's what we called it, making all these sounds. And we hadn't even gotten to the electric bass sounds yet. And we had all those. So we were really creating timbre. I like to think we were Mozart.
I'm not sure we were on the level of Mozart, but we were definitely sound designing. I think that's what we call that. Yeah.
That just sounded right. And quite frankly, anybody who's really studied Mozart, we all love his music. If you look at his scores, they are boggling. There's this big, beautiful chord, and you look at the notation, you go root, 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 fifth, root, root, fifth, third, root, 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 fifth, a third. And you go, what? there's 19 instruments, and 17 of them are playing the root, 2 are playing the third, one's playing the fifth. And it's like, how do you do that? He understood the sound of the instruments, and he could create texture and timbre. Again, I was saying, I think it's a timbre is what we were getting that was just unbelievable. So that's what we're talking about, Grant, with the creative flame.
Yeah, and what you were saying about with all the orchestration there, I think a big reason that's a powerful thing is because all the instruments, they have their own unique sound, their unique texture and timbre, and when they move in unison, often or in fifths and thirds and things like that, this kind of simpler intervals, but they're moving in a unified way. They tend to create this feeling of depth and fullness and richness.
That's exactly what it is. That's what Mozart did. Yeah. He could take 2 instruments playing unison, and because of their different timbres, you would hear a bunch of different overtones.
Right.
And then another instrument, he knew its timbre, and he knew what it sounded like. If he would put on it, playing unison, or maybe we'll put that one at the fifth, it would create still more overtones.
Right.
So you get this fullness in this sonic group of overtones, which any pitch, or any sound creates overtones. I mean, you can create a sine wave that doesn't have it, but most of them have overtones, and those combinations of overtones, that becomes a big part of your compositional palette.
Right. Yeah.
And that's Hans Zimmer to a T.
Yeah. He does really incredible experiments with sound textures.
With sound textures and with little bitty amounts of instruments. He just combines them in the right spots.
Yeah.
And we're really not saying anything new if you're at all familiar with the classical composers. Schumann and Bach and Beethoven, they were doing it a long time ago. They didn't have synthesizers and sound designers, so they learned how to take just the normal instruments and combine them to get just beautiful, beautiful textures. I think of our bottom feeders music. That's one of the things we called it, a bunch of that. I think of it as just always pretty, even though it wasn't. We did funky sounding stuff and blues sounding stuff and totally out sounding stuff, but the textures and stuff just made it have an organic or a combination of an organic yet a sound unknown to man that we'd created in there too.
I think that's been for a little while kind of a hard part for a lot of contemporary music creators to embrace, and a challenge for them to create a new sound or a sound that's not been used 100,000 times by everybody who bought that sample library or whatever.
Exactly.
Because I think so many people today who make music, and especially like younger producers and stuff, they tend to just use whatever sounds in the box.
Exactly.
And everybody does that. So everybody's going to sound the same. But there's this kind of whole movement right now of people that are beginning to take what they call found sounds. And we're talking about doing some of this tomorrow.
That's exactly, I was going to be you're getting into, keep going. Yeah, we're going to make a bunch of sounds tomorrow out of things that you wouldn't necessarily think is an instrument. And we're going to create good textures, the slapping of your hands, a piece of wood, a little bell going dink, the sound of my computer going bling, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I not too long ago, I recorded the sound of a typewriter and turned it into a percussive instrument. And that was kind of a fun experiment because it led to a piece of music that, isn't something you'd just hear every day.
Right.
It's not the same 808 that every other producer uses. And it's not the same drum sample pack that everybody has used for the last 10, 15 years.
You betcha.
And there seems to be a lot more of that happening, even in pop music. There's a lot of people starting to use the sounds of opening a can.
Well, I think they're getting sick of the can. I think they're getting sick of the can sounds that we all have. Exactly. Yeah.
But exactly, because so much of there's so much music that's being made that if you just stick with the same old sounds, if you don't experiment and make up something new, or even if it's, not an instrument, if you don't make something genuine and unique, then you just sound like everybody else who's using the same. Not to say that there's anything wrong with this, libraries of sounds that you can get. I think those are really cool for support sounds. Yeah. But I think
aren't you creating a library of your what you call found sounds, your own sounds?
Yeah, actually. Well, I'm working on a record right now that I just started recently that's going to have tracks. The first track that I made was called Crystal, and it's because I hit, went ding on a crystal glass thing. And the next song that in this record that I'm working on is called Wood. So a bunch of there's going to be stone and earth and water and wind and all this kind of stuff.
That earthy stuff.
Yeah, and maybe even steel and iron and different things like that. But
how about skin? Ooh.
Actually, I was thinking about one called Flesh and Blood.
Oh gosh, Grant.
No, that's literally just like claps and like the whatever those
sure.
sounds are. So like sounds you can make with your body. But yeah, this I guess maybe the title needs work.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so this record, I was thinking actually seriously considering putting out a library or releasing somehow all the sounds and the instruments that I'm making for this CD.
Good, cool.
Because I'm making a bunch of new sounds, new instruments and stuff that you can play on the keyboard and that kind of thing, just to make these sounds unique. So yeah,
for people who don't know, because I didn't till recently, you take a sound like a clink on a crystal, put it in your computer, then you can make a sort of a whole keyboard patch out of it, can't you?
Yeah. Actually, this has been going on since the 70s. I think it's the 70s. Like,
yeah, with synthesizers.
Yeah, and it's like the next generation of synthesizers. You can record a sound and map it to the keyboard,
right?
And it's just playing that same sound at different speeds,
right?
And depending on how fast it plays it, that
Sure.
changes the pitch. Yeah. They actually did this for the Terminator 2, the theme,
Mm-hmm.
the whole movie score.
I heard about it.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre. They like the entire thing is basically a very simple sample pack library that they screwed with.
Yeah.
Like the whole sound.
Yeah.
That's I can't remember the composer, but it's that really famous dum in that one really famous classical thing. Yeah. It's like a hit of a whole orchestra, but they slowed it way down. They went whoa. And that whole dunk 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 dunk, that sound that's like a hammer on an anvil.
Sure.
That was actually a completely different like metallic sound, and they changed the pitch of it. They brought it way down.
Wow.
And so it became like a dunk dunk dunk. So this has been around for a while. And
of course it has.
And that was kind of the beginning of that.
Well, I've been so fascinated by the things he's talking about right now, new sounds, different sounds. But I, of course, am still in love with the bass. And what I've done so much in the past, and looking forward to doing something tomorrow, and that is I want to create some textures with multiple basses that just sound beautiful. I keep you going back to that beautiful. It's not necessarily maybe beautiful, but just cool timbres and textures. Because like I said, we have great instruments and combining them. Grant was just now playing a little P-pod thing. What was that instrument called?
It's called the Run. It's Jung Run is what it's called. Yeah.
And you sure that's the name of it? It's not a person running.
Yeah. No, or it's Run or something. I don't really know how to say it.
It's a funny little 4 or 5 string. How many strings on it?
It's got 4 strings.
4 strings on it, and it's a short little scale. It's got a great big sort of boom, boom, boom body kind of thing, and it has a sound. We both talked about it, sort of like a piccolo acoustic bass guitar. It's like, how interesting. He's got flat wound strings on it. And immediately I went, oh my God, I can hear that with one of my beautiful singing fretless jazz basses and some double bass on the bottom. Yeah, so just it's hearing these textures and getting these textures together to create cool sounds.
Yeah.
So there's your answer. There's your question. So what are we going to talk about with sound? With that's it.
Making new sounds out of old
making
sounds.
new sounds out of that's good. I always liked that title. Charlie Hayden many years ago had a quartet, and he released an album called Old Bottles, New Wine.
Huh.
And it was a bunch of his friends, and they were all older musicians.
Yeah.
Old Bottles like, yeah, sure, we can put some new stuff in there. So Grant's going to make sounds out of his skin and blood, and I'm just going to make sounds out of basses. How's that? Yeah.
Well, with the addition, with what computers can now do, and the fact that, like, on your laptop there, you've got an entire studio basically built into that thing. 10, 15 years ago, we couldn't do that. What that thing is capable of now. So all you have to do is really combine a natural sound with what you can do to screw with it, basically in the computer, and you can make some really unique stuff.
Well, that's a tip I'll give you for any of you, composer people, arrangers, writers, and that is embrace, of course, all of the technology and the sort of artificial, little known to man sounds, but try dabbing a little real sound in there with it, acoustic sound, and it just gives it a quality like, oh my goodness. That's a trick that strings, they've used for years with strings, and that is you don't just use, a package of strings in the computer that says Hollywood strings. Well, you do that, but you put 2 or just 1 real instrument in front of it, and it just makes it sound beautiful. Yeah. It almost fakes your ear out is what it does. But more than that, it just creates different timbre in there, which is really nice.
Yeah, because what you do, once it's recorded in the computer and you play it back on a keyboard, it will play back the same way every time. Yeah. So when you play a note, it'll be the same as the other composer who played that note on that library. Mm-hmm. But if you add one sound that's that's acoustic, that's genuinely, not pre-recorded.
Moving air.
Yeah, something that's live. Even if it's like that sound, I can never make that exact sound again.
Right.
No matter how many times we record it, even the waveforms will be a little different. So it'll sound a little different. So if we, like you just said, put one, it doesn't even have to be the same instrument.
Right.
If we put one live thing with, with the things that you've created in the computer, it adds a lot to it.
Yeah. Woo, I think we're going to have some fun. What do you think?
I agree. Definitely.
I agree. Rob, where you at? Get on over here. Let's go, huh? Rob will eat this stuff up. He is such an organic player. He hears sounds just like we do, and he loves this stuff. So we're going to have some fun tomorrow. I think Grant's going to play a little, bug repellent can for a while, and I'm going to play like this little knife here. I'm going to open it and close it. Oh, that's it. That's happening, huh?
Actually, if we quantize that, it'd make a good groove.
I like that. Let's see here. What's this one? Oh, here's some duct tape. I bet I can get some duct tape sound, huh?
I've actually done this.
Have you done a...
I've used that exact sound. Yeah, it sounds a lot like a snare drum.
Oh, does it?
Like kind of thing, yeah.
Let's see, what else I got here? Here's some little foam. It didn't make any sound. Sheesh. Maybe that's not a real good instrument. Maybe it's just a real quiet instrument. Oh, here's a good one. Here's a tape measure, a metal one. Listen to this.
Oh, I'll bet that one actually. Because that's such a recognizable sound too.
Yeah.
If you put that in a piece of music, people will be like, "What the hell did they use a tape measure?"
And you're going, "Yeah, baby." Oh, now hold it though. It's got to be this exact one. Yeah. This is a vintage tape.
A vintage Ace.
Yeah, vintage Ace one here.
16 foot.
Yeah, and you can get. I'm gonna be selling these on eBay for like $89.99. Okay?
It's got to be that worn yellow, right?
Oh yeah, the color makes all.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think we're taking a little too far over. Hey, here's a good one here though. We got a little bottle of stuff, a little shaker of liquid. Man, he still sounds good, you know. Anything else you want to add, Grant?
I'm excited about the future of adding different sounds together, and what we're going to do tomorrow is the future and adding sounds together. So I'm excited all around.
Cool. Your music that you've been making recently just knocks me out.
Thank you.
I liked all of it, and I loved that video thing you made. Two of them, or all of them, but two of them. The one where you called what'd you call sampling the biggest sound in the world, sampling the ocean.
Yeah.
And he did all sorts of samples from the ocean. Woo! And I love that. What that big wind chime thing, man? What was that all about?
Yeah, that was, so I was just walking around in the woods one day on vacation with my wife, and we happened across this giant wind chime like statue thing that was built out in the middle of nowhere.
Giant, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was about 3 stories tall.
Yeah.
I climbed up one of the stories of it, but and I ended up going like, this is freaking perfect, because I had been making videos of walking around in the woods and using random things to make sound. So this was like the perfect opportunity. It was kind of bizarre. If I had known it was there, I'd be like, okay, we're going to go there. But
do you think that wind chime just grew that way naturally?
I'm pretty sure there's something in the groundwater.
But that was just a couple of things. Matter of fact, go to Grant's YouTube channel. You can see all that cool stuff. Most of you know mine, but if you don't, go to my Real Bass Lessons channel. By the way, that's a lot more tame. I'm just teaching bass, but still, we're having fun doing it. And we'll be videoing a bunch of the stuff. We're videoing a bunch of the stuff we're going to be recording too.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's just the first session. We were just talking about today. I'm thinking probably, I'd say 4 to 5 sessions to get all the sounds we want sort of recorded in the way we want, and then we put them together. Some of them will be songs as we finish them, but some of them will just be sounds that we recorded, little melodic things, rhythmic things, and we'll put them together later. Grant's going to do most of that. He's totally in the orchestration. It sounds beautiful.
Thank you.
You and Hans.
Yeah, someday.
So just call up Hans, ask if he wants to come over. Tell him, hey, say, Hans, I got some sounds, buddy, you've not heard. Come on over.
He might be interested, because he likes these. That's what he really enjoys and loves doing, is finding sounds that nobody's used before. Like the Joker theme in the Dark Knight series.
Yeah.
Like that one rising note, thing. He combined a few different instruments to make that, but just things like that, like creating a really bizarre, weird thing. He enjoys that.
I wonder if he's ever heard 132 out of tune basses all at once.
That's slightly frightening. To
hopefully not, right?
Well, then you did work at Berkeley for like 25, 30 years, so I'm sure you have.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. In an afternoon.
Yeah.
Fired up. Thanks, Grant.
Yeah. Think that worked?
100%, Grant. Stop recording.